We have two excellent speakers this morning. Gil Brulette is a Cisco Meraki Channel Account Manager for the Northeast. Roberto Toscano is a Senior Account Manager at Aspire. And I will now turn things over to Roberto. Roberto?
Just in case you're not kindly go over with you and any possible use cases we may have. So just in regards to Aspire, Chris, if you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So a little background on Aspire. Aspire was started over 15 years ago. It is a privately owned organization. We are headquartered in in Eatontown, New Jersey, and we have offices throughout New York and Pennsylvania. So we are a IT solutions integrator where we really specialize in secure infrastructure and communication solutions. We work with many different verticals, from the state, local government, education vertical to healthcare, as well as government and commercial sector. We basically have a really extensive group of well-trained and well-certified engineers, which is, I believe, is a key differentiator here. We can assist you from understanding your requirements and working with you to design a solution that meets your needs, then implementing, as well as, depending on a need, the ability to support it through our NOC and SOC, which is located in our Eatontown facility. Chris, if you could go to the next slide, please. And with that, we're going to be passing the torch over to Gil. Gil will be taking a deep dive into speaking about Meraki licensing, where it was, and where it's going now. So, Gil?
Hey, good morning. Can everybody hear me okay out there?
Yeah, you sound good, Gil.
All right, awesome. Hey, so thanks everyone for joining, giving us a little part of your morning here today, and thanks to the Aspire team for inviting me to go through some of the Meraki licensing. So if we can go to the next slide. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with this, but this is probably what your existing licensing models look like. So you have that single device, right, or multiple devices, and you may need to license the software. You have to look at hardware replacement. What type of hardware replacement do you want? How do you get upgrades? How do you get patches? How do you get fixes? Right? So it can become very, very complicated, right, for a single device to manage all these different components, right, just to make sure that you have the proper support and the proper licensing on that device to be able to get you the features and functions that you need. So this is just kind of a little representation of what typical licensing models can look like. So next slide. So from inception, Meraki has always been about simplification. Whether it's taking very powerful technologies and simplifying them, our dashboard user interface, simplifying your ability to go in and configure, manage, and optimize the different components of your network, right? Really, it's all about simplification, and we've carried that into our licensing model as well. So Meraki has a one-for-one licensing model. So one piece of hardware requires one Meraki license. If you have 10 pieces of Meraki hardware, then you require 10 licenses for that hardware. And that license does a couple of things. So it's obviously will activate the device and provide you centralized management, network-wide visibility and control via the Meraki dashboard being delivered through our cloud. There's a couple other components, though, that you may not be aware of that licensing provides you. So it provides you all feature updates, any patches, any bug fixes. it entitles you to any of those upgrades through the life of the license. So to give you an example, several years ago on our MX appliance, SD-WAN was not a feature. We added that feature to the MX appliance, and every customer that had an MX appliance received SD-WAN capabilities for free via a firmware upgrade. The second component of the license is that you have access to our technical support. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you can call into Meraki technical support, you can email Meraki technical support, or you can actually use your dashboard to open up a case with technical support. The third and final component is that it provides advanced next business day hardware replacement. And so if a failure is detected and it's confirmed, we will ship you out a replacement device the next business day. You should receive it, and then you can configure the device and then ship us back the failed device. So it's not like some solutions where you have to uninstall a device, box it up, ship it back. We fix it, and then you ship it back, and during that whole time frame, if you don't have a replacement device, you could be, your network could not be running as you expected. So we do the advanced hardware replacement as part of that. So all of those components are contained in that single license. So again, trying to make it as simple as possible for you as a customer. Next slide. So when Meraki was founded, we implemented a licensing model we call cotermination. And the theory behind that licensing model, again, is to simplify the licensing model. So what that means by cotermination is we have a single expiration date on the licensing for every single device that's managed under your organization. The other thing it means is that we dynamically calculate that expiration date based on what you have, and if you add additional equipment, there's a formula that we use that'll basically recalculate the termination date of your licenses. Again, so all of the licensing expires on the same exact day, right? So, and I've got an example of that to kind of show you how that works. But again, the idea behind that is so that you don't have to manage multiple expiration dates on multiple devices. You'll know that all of your devices will expire on a specific date. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's an example of what that looks like. So the example to the left, you have 50, MR licenses, right? You have whether it's a 1, 3, or a 5-year license term on that. And then at some point during the term of those licenses, you add one of our MX appliances with a either again a 1, 3, or 5-year term. What we do is we then perform a calculation and we average those licenses together. So what has essentially happened is the 50 MR licenses have moved out, the expiration date has moved out, and we've actually compressed the MX license. We've actually borrowed time from there to extend out the MR licenses. So the end of the day, the 51 devices, the 50 MRs and the 1 MX device will all terminate at the exact same time. And this happens whenever you add equipment and licensing to a Meraki network. In the back end, we automatically recalculate that co-termination date. So again, so that all of the devices will terminate on the exact same day. And then I'm gonna hopefully we have a little bit of time at the end. I'll actually show you where you can go into your dashboard and you can actually see this information. So if you have a network or an organization that's up and running, and you go in and you add some additional Meraki devices, you can actually go into your dashboard and you can actually see what the new co-termination date is for all of those devices. Next slide. So before I get into the new per device licensing, I just want to talk about some challenges, right, that we've been sensitive to on the cotermination model, right? So because we recalculate the termination date of your licenses, and it's generally, as you add devices, they're pushed out. Sometimes that can create issues when it comes to budgeting. So, for instance, you may budget in a certain quarter or a certain month to renew all your Meraki licenses, thinking that that's when they're actually going to terminate. And so it could be 1 year, 3 year, 5 years from the original date of installation. And so you go through your budget cycles, right? Get that all budgeted to renew those licenses, but somewhere along the line, you've added additional equipment, additional licenses, and so that termination date is not what you expected it to be, and potentially could move out to another month, could move out to another quarter, right? Which can create, again, issues when it comes to budgeting and renewing the license, right? So we understood that as a potential issue. The second thing is when the licenses expire, they expire on all of the devices in your organization at the same time. So what that means is when you go to renew those licenses, you have to renew every single one of those licenses. Any licenses that aren't renewed, after 30 days, that equipment will go into shutdown. All right, so again, that can become challenging when it comes to creating a budget and managing a budget for the licensing. And then the third part of it is under the cotermination model. As soon as we ship a license key, and the license keys are emailed automatically, as soon as we ship that license key, that license starts eating up time. So whether you claim that license immediately or not, it doesn't matter. It starts eating up time. And an example would be that if you were to wait 30 days before you activated that license, you would have eaten up 30 days of the 1, 3, or 5 year term you had on that license, right? So again, that's, again, feedback we've got on that, stuff, excuse me, isn't automatically installed. Next slide. Okay. So per device licensing. So recognizing some of the challenges, right, in our effort to simplify the licensing, we've actually taken a look at it in an optional licensing model, right? So it's not a brand new licensing model. It's just something optional that we offer to customers. And the difference is each device is licensed separately. So if you were to install a network of Meraki equipment with the 3-year license, all that equipment installed from day one would expire 3 years from the date you originally installed it. If during the term of that 3 years you added other Meraki equipment with 3-year licenses, their expiration date would be 3 years from the day that they're actually installed. So we don't have that co-term model. Everything is looked at individually. If we could go to the next slide. One of the other advantages of the per device licensing model is it's very simple math. So you have a 1 year license on a piece of equipment. Let's just say in the example here, you have 2 months remaining on the license and you renew that device. It's the 1 year plus the 2 months remaining. The expiration date moves out 14 months from when you apply that renewal. So again, very, very simple, straight math. There's no cotermination. There's no formulas. It's very, very simple to manage. Next slide. So these are the features and capabilities of the per device licensing. You can do a partial renewal. So again, because each device is licensed separately, I apologize. Because each device is licensed separately, you can do partial renewals. We're under the co-term model, like I said before, you have to renew the entire organization. You can manage multiple organizations, and you can move those licenses between organizations. There's a 90-day license activation window. So when you purchase the license and we ship it to you, You have up to 90 days to activate that license. Again, just to compare it to the co-term model, the license was activated as soon as we shipped it out. So we give you a 90-day activation window. There's enough number of licensing APIs that are available to help you manage the licensing. And then again, when a license expires, it's on an individual device as opposed to your entire organization. So again, we've taken a look at, trying to keep things simple. We've taken a look at some of the challenges and some of the feedback we've got on the co-term, and we've created a second. Again, it's an optional licensing model. We're not forcing anybody to move to this licensing model. If you choose to do it, it's very, very simple. There's a couple of clicks in your dashboard that you can do it. And there's only one requirement to use per device licensing, and that's when you're using Cisco umbrella with the Meraki access points. Because umbrella is not able to be co-terminated, we can't calculate that as you add licenses. That's the only requirement that you move to the per device licensing model. If you choose to do that, it's entirely up to you. You can do that. Again, you can do it at any time. By default, when new dashboards are spun up, the licensing model defaults to co-term. But again, you can change that with just a couple of quick clicks in your dashboard. So again, we're trying to address some of the problems, still keeping it simple. One of the other things about the per device licensing is if you still want to try to co-term your devices, we do offer partial licenses. So whether it's a new device you're adding, you can buy a partial license. Or if you have existing devices in your network, you can add partial licenses to those devices to bring them up to the expiration date of the new device. So again, very, very flexible. And again, offers a number of features that were not available under the co-term model. So we'll go to the next slide. So here's a little bit about the conversion details. And again, I want to make sure it's clear, right? We're not forcing people to convert. It's an option to be able to do that. There's a couple of clicks again in the dashboard that will allow you to convert it. And when you convert, you don't lose any time on your existing licenses, right? So it doesn't change the expiration date of your licenses. So in the example shown, you have several devices under your organization that have a 1/1/2025 expiration date. When you convert to per device licensing, we will then assign a 1/1/2025 expiration date to each of the individual components in your network. So it's it's a very seamless process to do. And again, we're not forcing you to do this, and you're not giving up any of the time on your existing licenses to be able to do that. All right, next slide. So with that, I'm going to move into the Meraki Enterprise Agreement. So like most Cisco products, Meraki has an enterprise agreement. I just kind of want to go through this at a very high level with you. If you have any questions or you think this might be a fit or you're interested in hearing more about the Meraki EA, I would ask that you reach out to your sales teams at Aspire, and we can put together a presentation and a call to actually go through the details and determine if this is a fit for your account. But really, it's, we're looking, customers that are looking in a growth or expansion mode with Meraki, how can they add devices, add licenses quickly? Again, if you're rolling out equipment and there's a deployment schedule that's greater than 12 months, again, Meraki EA may be a fit for you. If you're an existing Cisco EA customer and understand and use the value of the Cisco EAs, again, that's an opportunity. And again, it's a very, very simple, very, very simple to buy, consume, and manage with this model. Next slide. Okay, so this is what it looks like at a very high level. So there is a minimum total contract value on the licensing, just like any Cisco EA. That total contract value is for licensing only, does not include the hardware. It's a 3 or 5 year term on the Meraki enterprise agreement. This lists where it's available and where it's not available. And what we've done is we've broken it down into different suites. So the network infrastructure suite contains all of the traditional network infrastructure components. System manager contains our system manager software package, and then we have the camera suite, which includes our MV smart cameras. You can purchase licenses across multiple suites. You can purchase them in one suite. I mean, it all depends on what your network configuration looks like. Each of the suites, we provide a standardized discount. There's an annual true forward period. So for instance, if you purchase an enterprise agreement and say that you're going to use 100 of our MR cloud managed wireless licenses, and at some point during that year you use 150, right? You can overconsume. We allow you to overconsume. And at the end of the first year, we'll do an audit. We'll determine how many licenses you purchased, how many you're using. In the example I just gave, if you've purchased 100 but you're using 150, we will then bill you forward for the 150. We're not going to go back and try to recapture any of that licensing cost for the previous year. You've basically gotten to use those 50 additional licenses at no additional cost. But moving forward, we'll true that up, we'll true that up and reprice that. It's always a co-terming model. So no matter what you do, no matter how you add equipment, when you add equipment, the end date of the enterprise agreement will not change. So again, it does offer you some simplicity in understanding when that's actually going to expire. We do allow you a deployment ramp. So we know that in a lot of cases, everything is not going to be installed from day one. It could be over the course of 12 months. It could be over the course of 18 or 24 months. So knowing that you're not going to deploy all those licenses at once, we actually adjust the prices of those licenses that you're going to deploy at a later time. And obviously credit, for only the term that you're going to use those licenses. And then you can value shift within each suite. So what that means is if you purchase just cloud managed wireless licenses, and at some point you decide to deploy some Meraki switches, but you haven't purchased licenses for those switches, we'll allow you to add licenses to those switches. And when it comes up to the annual true forward period, if you have wireless licenses that you're not using, we can shift the value over to cover the licensing for the switches. And at the end of the day, it may mean that you have a minimal or no true forward charge going forward. So again, very, very flexible. Again, the key features are the co-term date that never changes. It's always the end of the 3 or 5 year agreement. It allows you to deploy devices as you need them. We provide discounting again for your deployment schedule. We'll also provide you discounting for any existing licenses that you have, give you credit for that. And it allows you to value shift between different components in the different suites. So again, if you would like some more information on this, I would ask you would reach out to your Aspire team. And again, we can set up a one-on-one and kind of go through this in a little bit more detail and determine whether or not this is a fit for your Meraki network. So with that, if you guys, we have a couple minutes left. I just want to show everybody to make sure you know where the licensing is so you can go in and actually see what your license expiration date, what model you're under, and then show you where you can actually, if you decide to convert to per device licensing, how you can do that. There is one caveat. If you're currently on the cotermination model and you decide to convert to per device licensing, there is no easy way to go back to the co-term model without basically rebuilding your organization. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that. If you decide to do that, it's sort of a one-shot deal without some extra effort in rebuilding your organization, right? If you decide to go back to the co-term model. But again, I think we've solved that problem basically by allowing partial licenses where you can still bring all your devices up to Coterm if that's what you decide to do. All right. Did you guys give me the ball quick?
I'm trying, Gail, but
Okay.
because you joined from a video device, I'm not allowed to make you a presenter.
All right, hang on here. I think I can do it. Let's see here. Can you guys see my screen now?
Yes.
Oop. Just do this quickly. Why can't I? Oh, here we go. All right. Okay, so here's this is actually a customer's dashboard. If you're using Meraki today, you're familiar with this. If you're not, this is what our dashboard looks like at a very high level. But just to go into the licensing, I'm just going to go under organization, and I'm going to go under license info. And this is what a typical licensing screen looks like. So it tells me, right off the bat that the license status is okay, which means I'm in compliance. It tells me that I'm in the cotermination model. And if you look right under there, that's basically where you start the process to convert to per device licenses. And again, it's a couple of clicks to be able to do that. This tells me when my license expiration date is. Did I lose something here? Okay. It tells me what security level, what security license I have on my MX appliances. And then underneath here, it tells me the different devices that I have licensed. It tells me what my license limit is and how many devices I currently have licensed. So for instance, the very top one, the MS-120, I have 7 licenses, but I'm actually only have 6 devices that are on the network using licenses. So I actually have an extra license available as well. So again, this is very simple how you do this. This is how you can go in and see what you want. And if you were to add another Meraki device, you would see that this license expiration date would push out. And again, all of these devices under this organization here are all going to expire on September 6, 2022, if there's no other changes made. If you were to convert this to per device licensing, each of these devices would maintain that expiration date, but it would be applied per device. Okay, so with that, I just wanted to kind of show everybody that very, very quickly. So you could actually get a look at that. And that's it for me today. I appreciate everybody's time.
Just an example, I primarily focus in the education space, K through 12, as well as higher ed. And where we've seen this come into play, where it might make sense for, say, a K through 12 school district to move to the to move away from a coterm model, would be sometimes if there's a device that's no longer being leveraged on their dashboard, but hasn't been removed, that could take away from certain licenses from the other devices, such as an MR access point or so forth. So if you're looking where you need to have that exact amount of time, if you purchase, say, a 3, a 5, or even a 7-year license for a Meraki MR access point, and you want to make sure that that's the duration you're going to get, it would make sense to behoove you to move to that main model. So that's just an example of something that I've actually seen in one of my districts, and they're actually moving to that model to be able to make sure they have those dedicated licenses for that amount of time.
Yeah, and so again, the other one is I think I talked about a little bit about budgeting, right? If you have a certain budget cycle and you're expecting those licenses to expire on a certain date, and that's when you have to budget, and for some reason you didn't realize that something's changed in the network. It could put you out of a budget cycle, right? So that's another example. And that happens in a lot of cases in the public sector business, right? Where they have very specific budget cycles. The other thing is, like I said, if you're using the umbrella with our MR access points, under that scenario, you have to go to the per device licensing model. And then that really has to do with the umbrella licensing, not the Meraki licenses. Another use case would be, just quickly, again, like I said, as soon as we ship the licenses under the co-term model, time starts ticking on them. If you know that you're not going to be able to deploy your equipment for 30 days or 45 days or whatever it is, right? You obviously don't want to lose the time on those licenses. So again, the per device model is what you want to select to be able to do that as well. So just a couple of examples. But again, we're not forcing you to do one or the other. It's your option as a customer to choose which best fits, your use case. But again, there are, some additional advantages by going to the per device that just are not available under the current co-term. So.
Well, thank you, Gil. Thank you, Roberto, for sharing your insights and knowledge this morning with us. Thank you to our attendees for attending our webinar. Attendees, everyone will receive a copy of the recording in a follow-up email. If you want more information about Aspire, please visit www.aspiretransforms.com. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.